Nativism. We heard of racism, we've heard of sexism, we've heard of all these prejudices, but we rarely talk about nativism. So what is nativism? Has it affected us in American society? Has it affected us in American history? The answer is yes. A very simple definition of nativism is the extreme disapproval or dislike of immigrants by native-born people. In times of heavy immigration, like the late 1800s and even the early 1900s, and even today in the 2000s, we see a rise in this nativist sentiment. Now, what does it look like? The nastiest, most extreme depictions of nativism look like the Ku Klux Klan, look like groups that are terroristic in nature. You are outsiders, you're not us. Now let's be clear, nativism is not exactly racism, but it can overlap. Irish people that came over because of the potato famine, they were seeking a better life, more opportunity. They were seeking food and sustenance, a place where they could survive. But their skin was as fair as the next Europeans, actually maybe a little more. So there wasn't a lot of physical difference. So racism wasn't the term. What people didn't like about them was that they were born elsewhere. They weren't American natives. Now the other thing we have to look at when we look at nativism is the overlap. The overlap, yes. When we look at racism, it's about physical features. Your dark skin, your light skin, your what have you. Your nose is too wide. These are indicators that we have racism. But does racism not spread into culture? We don't like their music, their food, the way they act. In the same respect, nativism also spreads sometimes into culture. Once again, Italian immigrants and Greek immigrants, they weren't Protestant. They were Catholic, Greek Orthodox, and thus that part of their culture made them undesirable to the people here in the States in that time period. Another interesting thing about nativism is nativism can hide itself, just like all the rest of the isms, it can hide itself in rationality. Ageism. It's not that I don't like those youngsters, it's just they don't have as much experience. Nativists sometimes conveniently hide their nativism in rationality and expedience. What do I mean? It's not that I don't like Mexicans, it's just they're taking our jobs and we have a job crisis. This actually may be true. The economy is a very important thing, and illegal immigration is definitely something that could disrupt it. But the economy and economic arguments don't make excuses for language or violence or being upset or disliking somebody who is a legal resident or citizen that is of Mexican descent. There is a ton of political cartoons from the early 1900s that are incredibly offensive to the people that were in the periphery, the immigrants coming to the United States and the people who lived in some of the dependencies, protectorates, etc., when America was kind of in an empire building mindset. But we cannot look back on those time periods with a very arrogant eye, because we are looking back from the future. We are looking from the 2000s back then. It would look very silly for us to say that African Americans are not as smart, Hawaiians could not do X, Y, or Z. We had a president who was a son of a Kenyan who was born in Hawaii that excelled at one of the world's best college institutions and respectfully held the office for 8 years. We look silly to say that people from the Philippines were mentally or physically inferior to us. After Manny Pacquiao conquered the boxing world for a number of years, then went home to be a statesman and a politician and leader, we would look absolutely ridiculous to say that Puerto Ricans are less than after seeing Sonia Sotomayor and her ascendance to the Supreme Court. there is a ton of modern day situations and examples that not being born here does not make you inferior. Different ethnicities and races does not make you inferior. So what we have to understand is, ladies and gents, be careful. The message is be careful. We are subject to the same isms as they were back then. Nativism isn't something that we struggle with as much, even though we do see it. We don't struggle with it as much because of these examples that have taught us otherwise. But we often forget, historically, what different collections of people have accomplished and proven to us. Please understand, racism, ageism, sexism, all the prejudices are things that we have to beware of because they're ever present, especially nativism, the extreme dislike, disapproval of people who are not born in your country. Thanks for tuning in. Please like, share, and subscribe. Let me know what word we want to discuss and talk about, and we'll break it down for you in our social dictionary. Take care.